Good evening, everyone. Finally, the last panel of the day. Probably one of the more interesting panels of the day, and that's one of the reasons why we keep it till the end. What we'll do is we'll make it more interactive. I don't have much involvement on the funding space itself, so I'll actually ask our panelists some questions from your behalf. Once I'm done, I think we'll open it up to the floor to kind of ask questions directly to them. I think I want to start off, I know we've introduced some of the panelists already, but still let them have a brief intro again. Introduce themselves as far as what their role is in the startup ecosystem or on the funding ecosystem. So, we'll start the project.
Sorry to interrupt for a moment. Just addressing the audience, we are distributing feedback forms, and once the session is over, our volunteers will be standing outside to collect them from you, so please do give us feedback. I'm sorry for the interruption. Back to Mr. Raut.
But Mr. Raut was my dad and project. So my name is Project. I run the operations of the Indian Angel Network. Indian Angel Network is what they call an angel investor group. It's a group of angel investors or people who invest in very early stage companies. Typically angel investor groups or angel investors per se. Invest in companies where the assumptions are yet to be proven out, where the idea looks interesting, the concept looks interesting, the team looks interesting, but it has yet to be proven out in that marketplace. So the proof of concept or getting that concept into the market is the kind of level that we provide funding. And typically anywhere between 25 lakhs to 5 crores is the kind of funding that we will provide to companies. But more importantly, it's not just about the funding, it's what comes along with the funding. When you invest through a group of angel investors or an angel investor group, what you get is the wisdom and the experience and perspectives of many experienced entrepreneurs and investors who've seen different businesses, and that's the value that you should seek from angel groups. I also run a platform called the Hub for Startups, which is where I work with very early and concept stage companies, and primarily to help them build an understanding of what it takes to build a business around that. What is the business model, revenue stream, revenue models, cash turnaround times, operating models, and so on and so forth.
Thanks. My name is Chintan Bakshi. I'm CEO of Startup Oasis. Startup Oasis is a Rajasthan-focused, Rajasthan-based incubation center. More or less, it does a similar thing as India Angel Network does without the funding. So we, in a certain sense, get a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, people who have ideas, up to a level where they can present to investors. A lot of students and people who want to start up generally tend to feel that now that they have an idea, they might have sort of done something that now they're ready to kind of go to an investor, but typically it requires, as per our understanding and experience, about 3 to 6 months of good amount of refinement of the model, brainstorming, going to the market, meeting some customers before you have a model which can be presented to an angel investor or to a seed fund organization, etc. Even after that, there might be changes, but our objective is to basically at least get the entrepreneurs up to a level where they can get funded from one of these angel investors. We are based in Jaipur, and we are currently working with about 10 startups, and also working with a whole lot of final year, third year students of various institutes, and working with them over a period of time so that over the next 6 months, 12 months, they can come up to speed, up to a level where they are ready to get their startups funded.
Hi, I'm Manoj Goyal. I co-founded TAI in Rajasthan as well. This was 12 years ago. And over the years, we found that there was a big need for having an ecosystem where people could invest into startups. And hence, there's the big, angel investment culture all across in the West, and increasingly in big cities in India. And there was an opportunity where we came about. All the members of TAI basically came about together and formed RAIN, since TAI itself is a non-profit organization. So RAIN was formed 2 years ago. Just like in Indian Angels, we also fund early stage ideas. Ideas to companies. Typical investment size that we do is 15 lakhs to 2 crores. If we have a proposal which needs more money, then typically we would go and seek help of other angel networks like IAN or Mumbai Angels or several other angel investor networks in India in our community and seek co-investment. The advantage that you get here is that we've got right now 30 investors in our group. These 30 investors itself, they themselves are quite accomplished people. They have a lot of different, they are from different fields. So there is substantial ecosystem within the group itself to handhold for any kind of mentorship which is required. So it's not just funding alone, but there's a lot of experience, there's a lot of inheritance of like 30 grandfathers in a good way, that you get as well, and then not just funding. So, that's about it for Ray. Our office is shared, with Thai, so we are in Thai office, and I would have contact information as well if somebody wants to sort of.
Sure, cool. Before, obviously everybody's first question here is, what do investors look for in a company when they're going out and investing in it? But I think before we get there, there's a couple of terms that are being used, circulated, you hear about them all the time. I would have one of you, please, if you can kind of tell everybody the difference between an incubator and accelerator and what really value they provide, maybe Startup Weekend, what are these other ecosystem support systems are doing for everybody? Just if you can just kind of a little bit cover that so that people get a better idea.
Yeah, so you mentioned incubator, accelerator, startup weekend, and all these kind of things. Okay, so incubator typically is is a physical space. I mean, that's how it's been thought about, and that's how most incubators initially were when they got set up. And it's basically a space where startups can come and they don't have to worry about office space and office facilities and other services like finance, taxation, etc. Typically, incubators also have some service providers. So Startup Oasis is an incubator. We provide physical space, and more importantly, there's also an ecosystem there. There are other startups. There are also, very importantly, complementary kind of startups. So there's a startup which is perhaps doing, let's say e-commerce. There's another one which is doing SEO. There's another one who's doing logistics, and there's a sort of complementary ecosystem which also gets built because of that incubator. Accelerator is actually a program, an entrepreneurship scaling up or a startup scale up program, which I think was initially done by this accelerator in the US called Y Combinator. And it's really a short, typically 1 month to 3 month kind of a program where also it's supported with some amount of initial seed funding. And the idea is that a bunch of startups get holed up in one place for 45 days, 60 days, and go through a structured process of building a company and building a product and doing a sort of a prototype and finally pitching to investors. So it's really trying to accelerate the process of building a startup. And building a startup is also about discovering the right business model. So, rather than actually doing it over a 12-month period on your own, it's done in a more controlled kind of an environment and, in a semi-structured kind of a fashion. And so, I mean, there are various other formats which kind of help the startup ecosystem. There's something known as Startup Weekend. There's something known as Startup Saturdays, which Startup Oasis also does in Jaipur. In fact, there's one tomorrow in MNIT. So what we are going to have tomorrow is actually a pitching session. It's a 2-minute, 3-minute pitching session, and there are about 16 or 17 teams which are pitching. Most of these are final year student teams, and they'll be pitching to a bunch of. So it's not investors, because these are at very initial concept level. So it's a bunch of mentors, Startup Oasis mentors, and we might select, let's say, 7-8 teams out of them, take them through a mentoring process, and after we are satisfied, then we kind of get them in touch with India Angel Network or Rajasthan Angel Investor Network. So that these are 3 or 4 types of formats of incubation and getting startups up to level where they can start seeking investment.
Thanks, Chintan.
Just to add to it, essentially what incubation programs or accelerators, or why you should join one even if you don't need a space or anything. By the way, not all incubation centers are physical spaces, some run virtual as well. But yes, 9 out of 10 incubation centers would be with physical. The reason why you should join one, at least a 2-month, 3-month accelerator, is because you're not aware as an entrepreneur of all the things that you need to understand about building a business. And what an accelerator does is, rather than you discovering these things over a 5-year period, it accelerates your understanding of all these aspects and gets you, it doesn't solve all your problems, but at least it makes you aware of everything that you need to understand about, so that your thinking evolves and you become a more mature and better informed. Likewise, in addition to accelerators and incubators, there are these various terms: angel investors, VCs, private equity funds, and so on and so forth. So what are these different things about? All of these are investors. They are one class of investors. What is that class? It's called risk capital, which is they put money. They don't take collaterals. They don't take any guarantees. It's not a debt in the sense you don't have to return it. That's one class, and I'll explain that a little bit. The second is debt, which is banks, things that banks, etc., would provide. Now, within the risk capital category, angel investors are people who think of it as 3 different stages of a business. Think of it as play school, school, and college. All 3 are in the business of education. What does the play school do? Play school gets the child a good understanding of the basics and the foundation, etc., and prepares them for school. What does the school do? School gives you a little more wider exposure about various things, and when you go to college, you literally specialize on one thing. Similarly, in a startup journey as well, there are 3 different stages. At the first stage itself, you have the concept risk. ये idea चलेगा कि नहीं चलेगा, ये अगर चलाना है तो कैसे करना है. All that process of discovery of what will work, what will not work, is what happens at the early stages, and that is the stage where angel investors typically put money into it. Why angel investors put money at that stage is because it's not just the money, but like Manoj said, this is the experience of many people that participate in helping you construct the business around it. After angel investors have got the business, or you have got the business along with angel investors' capital and some inputs to a level where it can now, you can say, okay, the model is tested, now I can scale it up to a bit. That is the time VCs will come in. VCs will come in when the assumptions that are underlying your business have been proven out. And at that point of time, they will put money. What does it mean in terms of assumptions being proven out? If I invest 100 rupees, I get 120 rupees as an output, or whatever that amount is. Those things have been worked out, experiments have been done, and all the money that I invest in my business, I know to a reasonably predictable level what the output will be. That is the time VCs come. They are not as participative as angel investors, in the sense they will probably meet with you occasionally and stuff like that. You can always reach out to them, etc. And late stage VCs is again a similar category where they will probably get involved at a strategy level, at board level. And so all 3 are investors, but each participate at a different stage. And much like you would not take a young child or a toddler to college and say कि बच्चा अच्छा है इसको ले लो. Similarly, at a concept stage, there's no point in going and approaching a VC and saying, great idea, will you fund it? And likewise, when your business goes beyond the concept stage and we need 20, 30, 40 crores to grow that business, there's no point in coming to an angel group as well. Understand which stage you are in and approach the right investor at that appropriate for that stage.
Great, thanks, Project. Manoj, if you can expand on that a little bit, and also just start covering as to what you at Rain look for. I think a lot of people would want to know, what kind of businesses should they be in, or is it ideas, is it teams, kind of just.
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to reiterate the importance of an accelerator or an incubator, because what happens is and this is speaking from a local experience that we've had. Most of the time when people come to us, or entrepreneurs come to us, most of the time they have a great idea, but they don't have a structure to it. They don't know how to go about it. Most of the time they don't have a business plan. At best, they will have 2 sheets in an Excel workbook. So it's important to go through. If a business has gone through an accelerator or an incubator, then they've gone through all that questions. They have a team in place which they require. So it's much more than just an idea. It's more it's more refined, and that is typically a stage where it gives us more comfort. Otherwise it's too nascent for us. I mean, there is a lot of, like Project said, there is a lot of hand-holding that typical investors do at the angel stage, but you can't expect that we would sit with you and make your business plan or make your financials completely. So that is where the difference is. So I hope you understand what is needed before you come to us. Right.
Again, let's.
So moving on.
Yeah. To the next point about at Rain. So 2 things. One, when you either an accelerator or incubator, what do you tell a startup? What do you tell an entrepreneur? How should they be going about building a business?
So we are sector agnostic. I mean, we're not particularly looking at any particular sector. We know, of course, the strength of Jaipur is on a lot of Jaipur-based things, export and so on and e-commerce and stuff like that. But there is like I said, we're not particularly restricted to a sector or even geography. So I mean, we have proposals coming in, from all over India, and even sometimes some entrepreneurs are coming from abroad as well. So of course, we'd like to sort of reach out and invest in companies which are more where we can control better. So that's a preferred choice. So Rajasthan is preferred because this is our territory, and it's also what happens is angel investor networks which are outside Jaipur also sort of bank on.
Today is sector agnostic, and the reason is because we are yet maturing as an ecosystem of investors to find enough fundable deals in a particular category. There are people with preferences. Some say that we are more inclined towards education or healthcare or technology or whatever. But by and large, people invest across the sector. So do we, and so does everybody else. There are 3 things that investors typically would look for, and it doesn't mean that if you don't meet these 3 things, it doesn't mean that it's not a good business. It just means that VC-funded businesses have to fall in a particular mold, and the mold covered these. One is the market opportunity large? Large in the sense, is it possible for you to build companies that will be 200, 300, 400, 500 crores worth of scale? Now, for example, if you're building a great restaurant, that's a great business. You might do 3, 4, 5 and run it beautifully, and you will earn probably 10 times more than you would have got in a job. But that's not a VC fundable business. That's a great business, but not a VC fundable business. VCs would look for businesses that can scale up to hundreds of crores. The second thing that we would look for is, does this concept or product have a reasonable chance of being a dominant player in that market, whichever sector that they're looking at? And dominant in different categories would mean different things. So for example, if you're doing things in which traditionally the market is dominated by 2 or 3 players, do you have a reasonable chance of being among the first 2 or 3 players, or not among the leading 2 or 3 players? But if you are, say for example, in the quick service restaurant kind of a business or a coffee shop chains, there are hundreds of these that would exist, and therefore will you have a dominant or a reasonably popular brand name, even if you're single digit market share players within that. So these are the 2 things on the basis of which we would want to evaluate a company and say, yes, we are interested in talking further. But the investment will happen only and only if we feel that this team is competent and committed to doing this extremely well. The only reason why we invest purely on the basis of teams, if of course the market is large and the product has a reasonable chance, is because business plans mean nothing. Every business plan is just a set of assumptions and some plan that we have made. A business plan, I keep on saying, is a useless product but a great process, because it helps you think through all the things. But at the early stages where everything is so fluid, all business plans will go through different iterations and changes, and therefore a team is most important because they will know when to pivot, they will know when to make the adjustments, they will know what is not working out well and so on and so forth. They will get things done, and that's the reason these are the three parameters. Across any investor group that you would look at, they will give different names, but these are the three things that they look for. Large markets, great products, great teams.
Great, thanks, Prasad. Chintan, when in the incubators, as companies become part of the incubation, is that what you drive to those companies while you're mentoring, talking to them? Can you expand on that a little?
Yeah, so I mean, in our case, when we meet up with companies or entrepreneurs, it's at a very early stage. The entrepreneur has an idea which he thinks is great and he wants to commercialize it. So we typically tend to look at three things, and in fact, the kind of the formats that we give them to fill in their business plan and idea is like a 3-slide presentation. The first slide, and we kind of put a lot of importance in that, is what is the problem that your idea is solving and how large is the problem? That's the starting point, and that I think in a lot of cases we see makes all the difference. I mean, once that has not been defined, it's not clear what the idea is, how large what the problem is and how large a problem it is. If that's not thrashed out at the outset, it's really difficult to build a business and to get funding and all that. That's one. Second thing we tend to look at is how clearly you define the customer. That if the customer who's suffering that pain point, how clearly you have defined it, whether it's like the whole world or it's like very clearly defined, this is my segment, this is his problem, and this is how I intend to solve it. So second is more customer centric, and the third sort of slide or parameter we tend to look at is the basic operating plan. How do you plan to kind of commercialize it and bring it to market? And, now at that stage, we know that it won't be very thrashed out, but the idea here is that there are a lot of sort of ideas or sort of innovations to problems which are good, but there's an implementation problem. So just to make sure that it's implementable, we tend to look at these three things. The problem, the core customer, and some sort of an operational plan. I mean, how do you plan to commercialize it, whether you want to go to Jaipur first, or you want to go online, offline, those kind of things at a fairly initial level.
Great. Manoj, you have something to add?
Yeah, what I was wanting to say was, again, an important part of piece that you must have and think about in part of the business plan is how much money you need and what are you going to invest with it, invest in. Because most of the time, people are excited about the idea that they're getting money in the first place. So, they think that, okay, how much can you give me? So it's not the question of how much can you give me. It's very important to have from you how much money you need and where and how you are going to utilize it. If you've answered that, that you will greatly increase the chance of getting funded yourself. Because people say, okay, can you give me this? So they haven't thought about actually the utilization of that and where it takes them. So it's very important also to understand the importance of lean startup as well, and to sort of study and have some of the assumptions, when we talk about assumptions, already listed out as to, so you must know your math, you must have done your numbers to the extent where you must be able to say that my cost of customer acquisition would be this, my my cost of operation would be this, and then this would be my gross margin and so on and on. So.
And that's a great point, Manoj, in terms of knowing how much money you require. 90% of the plans come to us fall into category. Either they have asked for too little money or they have asked for too much. And I'll explain what I mean by that. When somebody asks for 5 or 10 lakh rupees from an angel group, we know that this person really hasn't understood how much capital he or she would require. And the reason is this, because when you're in a concept building stage, you need to focus for the next 12, 18 months on building the business. You need to have capital that is enough for you to last for at least 12 to 18 months. You don't want to get distracted in between and saying, Abhi, I've got my something there, now let me spend 3 months, 4 months in trying to find capital. Laser focus, you should be on that. Ask for money that will be required for 12 to 18 months. Now, why 12 to 18 months? Because that's the kind of buying. I'm giving you, of course, generalizing to a great extent. Each business will have specifics. But when you're looking for money from angel groups, you ask for as much money as is required to prove the assumptions underlying your business. What does that mean? For example, if you say my assumption is if I approach 10 customers, 8 of them will give me a meeting and 3 of them will buy. That's an assumption. That A, I'm able to meet 10 customers is an assumption. That when I meet 10, 8 will give me a appointment and meeting is an assumption. When I meet 8, 3 of them will buy is an assumption. Now, you will discover whether it is 3 or 2, whether it is 8 or 6, whether it is 10 or 8. All these things will discover and you will come to a model. Now that process typically takes about 12 to 18 to 24 months. You should ask for money that will take you from where you estimate it to be, and add a 6-month buffer to that as well, because it usually takes a lot more time than entrepreneurs do. The other mistake that we see is people ask for a lot more money. They ask for money for proving the assumptions as well as scaling up the businesses. Now remember, these are 2 different phases. At these 2 different phases, the valuation of your company is also going to be different, because at the early stage, everything was in the air. Everything had to be discovered and had to be proven. After you prove that, you are able to command a better premium in the market as well, and command a better valuation as well, and a different class of investors come into play. So assume the time that you would take to prove the assumption and get as much money as required. Yes, sometimes people may require some amount of money to build a prototype, etc. But then you can assume that you need 10 lakhs to build a prototype, and you need say another 80 lakhs to sort of run for the next 12 months, 15 months to get that product in that market. Say I need about 1 crore, of which I need about 10 or 15 lakhs right now for the next 3 months to build the prototype. It is called a tranche, which is saying that my first tranche will be required will be about 15 lakhs or so. After that, I require another 30 lakhs for the next 3 months, and after that, I need 50 lakhs for the next 6 months, whatever that thing is. But don't ask only for money that is required for the next 3 months. You're unlikely to get that, because that's not going to be sufficient.
I have to add to that. Thanks for filling in, Project. Also, what happens is most of the time, people think that going to the angel investment is the only round that they will need. So they think they typically make business plans where they say, okay, मेरे को आप ये 1 crore दे दो, उसके बाद in 2 years my business will be hugely profitable, it will be cash flow positive, and that's it. It'll be, so they paint such a rosy picture at the end of 2 years, or post, let's say, 1 crore or whatever, which actually is very illogical. So if you think about why when you think about the life cycle of a angel investment, I mean, angel investment is just a bridge loan. So like Rajat said, you must ask for enough money which lasts you for about a year and a half, or 2 maximum. So it's just a bridge loan. Obviously, you are coming to us with a scalable business plan. So the need for money doesn't really end after 2 years. If you are going to scale, if you have a scalable business plan, after 1.5 years, you will still need more money to grow beyond the angel investment. And at that point of time, we would have an exit, or possible, exit at that point of time. So the business plans they don't stop after angel. Angel is a starting point. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks. Chetan, anything to add to that? So we have about 13.5 minutes. I told everybody we would make it more interactive. Can I see how many people have questions? For this, please 3, 4 hands up. So can we start here?
I'm Vijay Agarwal from Choice Technologies. My question is, could you define the criteria for a good team? How would you judge whether the team is good or?
Anyone? Yeah, what is a good team? At the end of the day, a good team is a combination of people who have covered different aspects of the business. Ideally, if let's say, for example, in e-commerce company, somebody with technology experience, somebody with marketing and brand building and sales experience, somebody with procurement, supply chain, backend, etc., etc. That makes that makes a team with complementarity of skill sets. That's an ideal combination. Most businesses will have different kinds of divisions that they. I was just giving the example to somebody else. You know, when you're thinking about building your business plan, think of not as your business plan, but it helps to think of saying that if Mukesh Ambani or Anil Ambani were doing this business, what would they do and how would they do it? First of all your limitations that you put on yourself go out of the picture, the scale changes completely. But more importantly, you'll realize that the first thing that Anil Ambani would do if he was doing your business is hire 6 or 7 VPs. Now, it doesn't mean that he can afford it because you can't. You don't need those people. You need those people. Now, you can't have 7 founders, but at least if you have 2 or 3 of those core areas covered, that makes a great founding team. What we also typically look for is people with a similarity or similar aspiration. People with the same amount of drive, same amount of passion. And we have also observed that people from a similar socio-economic strata are reasonably, the reason is this, because if, for example, one person is extremely from a well-to-do family and one person is from a sort of financially challenged family, if the business does reasonably well, the guy who's from an extremely well-to-do family will have no, okay, that's not really as big as I'd expected it to be. His incentive may not be aligned with the same guy. On the other hand, if the business is not doing extremely well or not doing well, the ability of the person who is financially challenged to sustain in that entire thing with the same level of passion may be challenged. Now that's not a negative in case there are people with different backgrounds. That's not a negative, but at least complementarity of skills is essential. 3 people, all with the marketing, all with marketing experience, with MBAs and this and that, with large companies, but no understanding of the domain is a no.
Do you need a history of working together also as a team? Because if I hire 3 people...
It is helpful, not necessary, because it is very difficult to, do that. Yes, a lot of companies do get founded by friends who have worked together or friends who have been in college together and so on and so forth, because there is familiarity of doing that. But when 2 or 3 friends come together, they come together and all their designations are co-founders or directors and stuff like that. But what we look for is one person who's leading the pack. It is very, very important for the team to identify who the CEO is going to be, because you will need one person to be declared the CEO at some stage. If at this stage you haven't agreed who this is, that is one big reason for fights within co-founders. But who caisa CEO banega? Maybe to utne kaam karta hu. Why would you be the CEO and stuff like that? And if you don't fight, your spouses will. So it's true. I mean, so it is very, very important. So complementarity, how people gel together, aspirations, clear agreements between them, and so on and so forth, are things that we would look for.
Good evening. My question is for both Rajat and Manoj. The funding ecosystem in India has evolved quite a lot in the past few years for companies focused on technology or services. Are there similar opportunities for companies that want to enter the manufacturing space or even for SMEs?
As long as there is scalability, definitely. The challenge in traditional manufacturing or SME segment is scalability. So if there is, if the business model has potential where the same thing can be replicated in multiple areas or whatever, then of course, why not?
Great question, and I think that's the need of the hour. By default, not by design, a lot of funding in the initial stages was in technology companies because it was very capital efficient. You could build services, businesses and stuff that were very limited. छोटा सा office rent कर लिया, computers hire कर लिए, EMI पे ले लिया, and you got a business started. It was very much possible to do that. Manufacturing businesses by definition typically require a lot of capital, etc. And therefore they may not be necessarily businesses that are VC funded. You could have a lot of other things. But that said, my personal passion and my personal goal is to make sure that a lot of so I have kept a target myself right now. about 60-70% of the funding that happens in the top technology, IT enabled, mobile VAS and those kind of things with a spattering of other investments in other places. My personal goal is that by 2016 that technology component should be no more than 25%, but a whole bunch of other things, biomedical devices, manufacturing, especially design-led manufacturing, healthcare, services, farm and agri businesses, packaged foods and stuff like that. These are all inherently scalable businesses that need to be done. By the way, there is a lot of funding happening for non-technology businesses as well. In fact, one of the last few companies that we funded was a company by a bunch of college kids making an automated dosa making machine. And very clear vision. They wanted to make a dosa making machine which was as easy to operate as a photocopier. You want thicker, thinner, crispier, this, that, whatever, you just, like you would adjust the density of a photocopy, you press that, 5 copy chahiye, 5 dosas come out. They currently have developed an industrial side, which means hotels and all that they sell it. They've got about 120 hotels in South India doing that. By 2015, they will have a domestic one, and their aspiration of the team is to make sure that every house that has a microwave should have a dosa making machine in the house as well.
Nice.
Hi, good evening. My question is to Prajakth. Prajakth, you talked about asking for too much money. I'd like to know a little bit more about how, as a business who's looking for funds, how do I judge whether I'm asking for too much money in my plan or is it reasonable?
Too much is not in terms of quantity, but in terms of the phases. So, for example, if your business requires, say, again, think of the 3 phases. The first phase is the concept proof stage, saying that I want to test the concept. Now, concept is not just about whether this product works. Concept is everything that is underlying it. What are my margins? What are my returns? Which business model works? What is my pricing point? Which customer segment? Does this customer buy this better? Or am I selling to SMEs, or am I selling to the M of SMEs, or am I selling to the S of SMEs, or am I selling to large corporates? Is this my pricing point? Is this my distribution channel and stuff like that? Now, when you're looking for funding to prove these kind of things, estimate the amount of time that you would require to do that, which is where the whole business planning process comes in. Build in a whole bunch of iterations, etc. into that as well, and typically add in about 6 months of buffer. So if you say, for example, think that you will be able to prove these in about 12 months' time, think about saying that, okay, how much capital do I need, how much money do I need to survive as a company for 18 months? Why? Even if you prove it in 12 months' time, to get the next round of capital requires 3 or 4 months. You will approach investors, you will make meeting presentations with them, then they will meet, then they will call you for further meetings, then there will be due diligence. This process, if you're lucky, takes about 3 months. If it gets delayed, it can get delayed to 4 or 5 or 6 months as well. So budget enough money that is available so that you survive. I cannot tell you how many companies die because they ran out of money for 2 quarters. See, यार थोड़ा और पैसे होते तो ये concept ना ठीक हो जाता, and that's true.
For e-commerce, where would you say a concept has been proved?
See, there are certain categories in which the basics of the concepts are proven. Do customers buy? That is proven. What is the cost of customer acquisition? That is proven, and stuff like that. So in e-commerce companies, typically you will not get concept proving capital anymore. You will need to get into VC proving capital. You may have a limited amount of time to a limited capital that is required to get something going, get a team in place and stuff like that. But this business is proven. The e-commerce business fundamentals are proven. So whether you're selling jewelry, whether you're selling this, irrespective of what you're selling, even if you're selling fertilizers, and people are selling that and are doing enough, whatever you're selling, the models are proven. Now, what you need to do is just make sure that you have the right ingredients in place, and ingredients in a team, processes, technology, people, and some of these things that are done. E-commerce is now a question of great execution, not a question of saying proving whether this will work or not work. And therefore, 99 or 9 out of 10 e-commerce businesses are not fit for angel investor stage funding. The reason is because there is nothing that you can do with 1 or 2 crores in e-commerce companies. Unless you have 10, 20 crores, you are not able to get to that level of sustainability. You can't go to 3, 4,000 transactions by taking 1 or 2 crores from people.
Hi, this is Kishore. So if I have a unique idea, is my worry on the idea or concept getting leaked or confidentiality of the idea, is that worry really a valid one if I want to run it past, the set of group of experts that you guys have to test the idea out?
Excellent question. The point is, as an inventor, the thought, the idea is very sacred to you. It's like your baby. But the point is, there are two lines of thought. There is A, you can keep it to yourself and take it, all the way yourself. B, believe in it. Okay, and most of the angel investor networks take confidentiality very, very, very seriously, because the heart of the matter is the idea itself. So since the credibility of the whole association is at stake, there are very strict norms of of non-disclosure, non-circumvent, blah blah blah, whatever. So you must, I'm not saying you should be blindly trusting anyone, but most of the time, most of the large organizations are trustworthy. I'd like to say that. And then, it really depends on you, on how you're able to sort of, capitalize on that idea, taking there and then, taking it forward. But yeah, I would like to say it's fairly confidential, because at certain stage it has to go to the market anyways, right? You cannot just keep the idea to yourself. You want to add?
One is of course angel groups, not just in terms of blindly trusting, but there are NDAs that each member of the network signs a non-disclosure agreement, which prevents him or her from leaking that idea. Every person who sees the business plan has done that, and therefore by legal, but even otherwise, have you ever heard of anybody's plan being robbed and कि उसने idea करके, these are fears that are unfounded. यार अपना खुद का प्लान करने में लग जाती है यार, दूसरे का क्या करोगे? Ideas mean nothing. At the end of the day, it's the plan that matters, and each person's business plan is likely to be different. Even if I tell you my idea, I will do it in a particular way. I will plan it in a particular way. You will do it in a particular way. Barista and cafe coffee day are in the same business, but their business plan or the plan for their business is likely to be very different in terms of, so it really doesn't matter. Ideas, you don't have to worry about whether ideas will get stolen or not.
Hello, my name is Gaurav Kansali. I want to ask that when an angel investor invests in a funds a business model, how do they plan to get returns out of it? At what time?
So think of it like the stock market. When you today say you buy Bharti Airtel shares at 320 rupees, how will you make money?
It depends on how it
you will make money when you are able to sell that share to somebody else for a higher price, hopefully, right? Agar 400 rupees ho gaya, you should be able to sell it out. Now in public market, what happens is that there is, you put it on the exchange, somebody else buys it. A startup or non-listed company is not created, but the only way an investor who invests money in your company and takes share is able to make money when they are able to sell that share to somebody else. Who are that somebody else? Either the management can buy out, but as Mahesh explained, that's not going to be very healthy returns. The second is when the next round of investors buys in. So angel investors have say put in 2 crores and taken say 25% of the company. Now VC wants to invest in the company, or a late stage VC wants to invest in the company. They may acquire some shares of the angel investors and give them a partial return. The next stage, when late stage VCs or private equity funds come into the picture, they might acquire all the minority shareholders, and that's how you trade the share. The third exit option for people is what is called strategic sale, which means when the company is either fully sold and bought by somebody else, or a strategic partner buys into you. So for example, if you're in the business of say a mobile app to track health, records of people, and assume that we invest 1 crore and we take 25%. Tomorrow Fortis Healthcare may say, hey, this is an interesting business because this gives me access to data, I want to invest in that company. They might buy that 25% share that we have after you get say 1 million users for say 10 crores instead of 1 crore that we have put. So that's how investors make money. But the reason why investors look for 10x return is simply, think of it mathematically. If we invest 1 crore in 10 companies, how much would we have invested? 10 crores, right? If you had put the same money in stock market, what do you think is a reasonable return to expect? 15-20%? Now, assume that we are able to sell off after 5 years. This 10% should have become, how much? It should have become 20-25 crores, right? In 5 years' time. Now, when we invest in 10 companies, 1 crore each, how many do you think of those 10 startups would survive after 3 years?
2 or 3, I guess.
2 or 3. Baki to either they are dead or they have given. So these 2 or 3 companies have to give how much? Not 1 crore back, not twice that 1 crore back. They have to give me the returns for that 25 crores that I would have get if I had, put in earlier. And that's the only way the game can be played. You invest in companies knowing very well that 5 or 6 of these companies will die down. You are hoping that some of these will survive and one of them will be a star. In the lifetime of a VC, maybe there is 1 or 2 stars that will come in. Lifetime in the sense 15-20 years of investing. Every cycle of investing about 10 or 12 companies, maybe 1 or 2 companies would do reasonably well and stuff. So that's the way, that's why it's called risk capital.
Okay, how to decide the share of angel investors? Like you said, 25%. How to decide that?
So I want to answer partly the first question, first part of the question. It's most of the time we are not just looking at the company being profitable, but actually making an exit, because the angel investors are not there just to see a happy company or a profitable company in 2 years or whatever. But if there is no exit, there are no returns. So angels don't want to be your partners forever in the business that you are in. So we are in to seed the business and get out of it once the business scales up. So if you're not there forever to be your partners in business, so that's a important dimension as well to what Prajit said.
Okay. Regarding that share, I mean, how
so that really depends on we would invest into a company from 15 lakhs to 2 crores. Our investment percentage could be anywhere from as low as 10% to a maximum of 30%. So the objective hereby is not to control the company or actually own the company. It's a formula which we would derive as a valuation, which would be based on certain matrix, and which most of the time we peg it to a particular benchmark that you would sort of like to sort of put in your business plan. So the money could come to you in tranches. The valuation could be based on also some of the landmarks that you achieve, in the 1.5 years of business that you project to do with us.
But that shareholding has to be decided, initially.
I think I would request, this is getting into another panel discussion, and we have to call it a day at some time or the other. So I apologize. I know it's very interesting questions, but the hotel also has some time limitations on us. I'm sorry that we had to call it so late into the day, into this very, very interesting
We can take this offline.
Yeah, so everybody's here, so we can take it offline.
Excuse me, I have a question to ask. Sorry, I missed it. I have a question for Mr. Goyal. You being a local champ, I'm really keen to know in the last couple of years, how old is Rain?
Rain is 2 years.
2 years old. So in the last 2 years, how many local projects you have funded?
So we funded one project. I mean, we practically started only last year.
Okay.
We funded one project. It's called organicshop.com, and they already actually have become leaders in the market space that they are, and they're doing very well. And we're even talking about even giving second round of funding to them.
So you have any special focus for the local people, or you are more keen about other projects coming from outside Jaipur?
No, this was a Jaipur-based project, and like I said in the previously in my talk, we'd like to sort of invest into projects where we can make a difference and reach out. So which means our reach is Rajasthan. So
May we have your contact details?